Friends, as you may know, in recent weeks, I've been talking quite a bit about the prospect of vindictive prosecutions being brought by Donald Trump and Pam Bondi's dirty DOJ officials. Well, now we have the first court filing on this very topic. It is Abrego Garcia's motion to dismiss his criminal case for vindictive and selective prosecution, and it is one hell of a legal brief documenting and highlighting not just the lawlessness of the Trump administration, but the horrors being perpetrated by Trump and company. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, in my 30 years as a federal prosecutor, I have never seen a more egregious case of vindictive prosecution than what Donald Trump's DOJ did and is still doing to Abrego Garcia. And there is a brand new court filing that just dropped in Garcia's criminal case down in Tennessee. And I want to take some time with it. I want to read it at some length, and I'm going to ask you to please stick with me, because you are going to see just how abusive, just how lawless, just how horrific Trump and his administration are acting. And before I turn to this new court filing, if I could ask, if you enjoy or appreciate these Daily Justice Matters videos, can I humbly ask that you just hit subscribe on my YouTube channel? It's always free. It costs nothing, but it really does help support, my efforts here every day, fighting for the rule of law front, posting a new legal analysis video daily. So I thank you for that. Now let's turn to this new blockbuster, I think is the right word to use, court filing in Abrego Garcia's case. In the case of United States of America versus Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, memorandum of law in support of defendant's motion to dismiss for vindictive and selective prosecution. Preliminary statement. And friends, I think it's really important to go through the entirety of the preliminary statement. It's just 2 pages long, double-spaced, but I hope you'll bear with me here. The prosecutor has more control over life, liberty, and reputation than any other person in America. But prosecutorial power, though vast, is not unlimited. It cannot be used to punish someone for exercising his constitutional rights. Yet that is exactly what happened here. Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been singled out by the United States government. It is obvious why. And it is not because of the seriousness of his alleged conduct, nor is it because he poses some unique threat to this country. Instead, Mr. Abrego was charged because he refused to acquiesce in the government's violation of his due process rights. The government unlawfully removed him to El Salvador, an action the government, subsequently admitted was a mistake. Predictably, once in El Salvador, Mr. Abrego was incarcerated at the notorious Terrorism Confinement Center, CECOT, where he was beaten and otherwise subjected to inhumane conditions. Mr. Abrego responded to the government's shocking illegal conduct by filing a lawsuit. Rather than fix its mistake and return Mr. Abrego to the United States, the government fought back at every level of the federal court system, and at every level, Mr. Abrego won. This case results from the government's concerted effort to punish him for having the audacity to fight back rather than accept a brutal injustice. The central event alleged in the indictment happened in 2022. At the time, Mr. Abrego was living in the United States lawfully. He had secured an order from an immigration court prohibiting his removal, meaning his deportation, to El Salvador, the country of his birth and citizenship, to protect him from gang violence he feared if returned there. In November 2022, Mr. Abrego was pulled over, allegedly for speeding, while driving an SUV with 9 passengers through Putnam County, Tennessee. Federal authorities were informed of the relevant facts and declined to investigate or prosecute Mr. Abrego. He was sent on his way without so much as a traffic ticket. 3 years later, unrelated, the government picked Mr. Abrego up off the street, along with others with similar immigration status, as part of a shock and awe immigration enforcement push. Over 3 days, the government whisked him from one detention facility to another in a deliberate effort to keep Mr. Abrego, his loved ones, and his attorneys guessing about his whereabouts. Then, the government forced him onto an airplane bound for El Salvador, where the government was legally prohibited from sending him. Mr. Abrego was detained there without any charges at CECOT, where he was tortured. And friends, put a pin in that, because in a minute we're going to turn to the paragraph that relates what was done to Abrego Garcia in that prison in El Salvador. While Mr. Abrego was being tortured in El Salvador, his lawyers filed a lawsuit on his behalf in the United States. That suit contested his removal and sought an order returning him to the status quo ante, his ordinary life in Maryland, where he lived with his wife and children, all U.S. citizens. Even as government officials recognized both publicly and privately that Mr. Abrego's removal to El Salvador had been a serious mistake, the government, the Trump administration, responded not with contrition or with any effort to fix its mistake, but with defiance. A group of the most senior officials in the United States sought vengeance. They began a public campaign to punish Mr. Abrego for daring to fight back, culminating in the criminal investigation that led to the charges in this case. Federal Criminal Rule of Procedure 12B3A4 authorizes motions to dismiss an indictment for selective or vindictive prosecution. Those motions are infrequently made and rarely successful, but if there has ever been a case for dismissal on those grounds, this is that case. The government is attempting to use this case and this court to punish Mr. Abrego for successfully fighting his unlawful removal. That is a constitutional violation of the most basic sort. The indictment must be dismissed. And now, friends, let's turn briefly to the torture that Abrego Garcia suffered in that prison in El Salvador, because that torture is on the hands of the Trump administration. Why? Because an immigration court judge had ordered the Trump administration that it may not deport Abrego Garcia to El Salvador because of what he experienced, courtesy of gang violence there, that led his family to send him to the United States in the first place. So the Trump administration violated that court order, unlawfully and unconstitutionally deported Abrego Garcia, and virtually directed the authorities of El Salvador to imprison him, even though he had been charged with and convicted of absolutely no crime. He shouldn't have been sent there. He shouldn't have been imprisoned there, but he was tortured there. And that is on the hands of the Trump administration. Mr. Abrego is illegally seized and removed to El Salvador. After 6 years of living and working in the United States lawfully, the government inexplicably upended Mr. Abrego's life. On March 12, 2025, while driving home from work with his young son in the car, Mr. Abrego was pulled over by ICE agents. The arresting agents had no warrant for his arrest and no lawful basis to take him into custody. They told him only that his status had changed. Over the ensuing 3 days, Mr. Abrego was shuttled from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, from one ICE detention facility to another, with stops in Maryland, Louisiana, and Texas. On March 15, 2025, without any notice, legal process, or hearing, ICE forcibly transported Mr. Abrego to the Terrorism Confinement Center in El Salvador, a notorious supermax prison known for widespread human rights violations. While at CECOT, Mr. Abrego was tortured. Starting immediately upon his arrival, he was repeatedly beaten. When he first got to CECOT, he was given prison clothing and then kicked in the legs with boots and struck on his head and arms to make him change clothes faster. Once he was dressed, his head was shaved and he was frog-marched to a cell, being struck with wooden batons along the way. The physical torture continued thereafter. Mr. Abrego and others were deprived of sleep by being forced to kneel throughout the night from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., and prison guards would strike anyone who fell from exhaustion. Mr. Abrego was denied access to a bathroom and soiled himself. Mr. Abrego was also effectively starved while at CECOT. During his first 2 weeks there, he lost approximately 31 pounds. Now, friends, I have to admit, I'm fighting the urge to read this entire 35-page court filing to you. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that. What I will do is I'll post a link to this new court filing in the description for this video. But what is crystal clear is that the Department of Justice ginned up, trumped up this federal prosecution down in Tennessee based on little more than a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee in which Abrego Garcia apparently did nothing wrong other than speeding, and for which Abrego Garcia didn't even receive a traffic ticket. And the federal authorities back in 2022 declined to investigate or prosecute Abrego Garcia for anything in connection with that traffic stop or anything else. But years later, in 2025, they tried to use that 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee to indict Abrego Garcia in Tennessee for federal crimes, only after the Trump administration got caught red-handed deporting Abrego Garcia to El Salvador in violation of an immigration judge's order, and after they violated Abrego Garcia's due process rights. And here's the important part for vindictive prosecution purposes. They indicted him after Abrego Garcia fought back, trying to, protect and preserve his constitutional due process rights. That, my friends, is one hell of a winning vindictive prosecution claim, and this indictment in Tennessee should be dismissed, but beyond that, the Trump administration should be held accountable for their lawlessness, for their unconstitutional acts, for their abuse of Abrego Garcia, and frankly, all similarly situated people who have been abused, victimized, retaliated against by this corrupt presidential administration, because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.